Welcome back to the podcast and today's episode with me, Johnny Pardo. Today, I welcome Linda to the show where we're going to be talking about transformational health, the work she does as a transformational health and spiritual coach as well, in helping people really connect and condition with themselves a lot more. And I'm excited for the conversation today. So, just a quick introduction to Linda. So, Linda, as I've mentioned, is a transformational health and spiritual coach, and she helps people release the conditioning of their past in order to create a life they love to live. So, Linda, welcome to the show today. Glad to have you on and make this happen. So, yeah, be interesting to hear a little bit about your story in terms of helping people get into their best lives, and obviously you're a transformational health coach. So yeah, what really got you into that?
Yeah, Johnny. So thank you for having me be here with you and have this conversation. I'm super excited to share what I do and to just be on your podcast. So thank you. And yeah, so when we say transformational health, I kind of just want to clarify that for people in
Mm,
case they're like, well, what is transformational health? What does that even mean? And transformation itself, the way that I think of it is, it's creating something and bringing it into existence that wasn't there before or it wasn't visible before. Like, I don't know if you may not be old enough to remember the Transformers, the
mm.
Transformers, where they were like a car and then next thing you
Oh
know,
yeah.
they're a robot. Where did that come from, right? So there's possibility for us inside of us for our physical health, for our emotional health, for our relationship health. There's a possibility that exists inside of us that is there. And I help people bring it to the surface. And the way that we do that is really, you kind of mentioned in the bio, uncovering or releasing the conditioned way of thinking.
Mm,
And some people that may be like, well, how does that apply to my physical health? But it absolutely does, because our physical body is the representation of the thoughts and feelings that we are constantly holding within ourselves. Those thoughts and feelings create the physical expression of what's going on in our life and in our body. So I hope that clarifies a little bit about what I do.
mm. That's great. Yeah, no, I love that. And yeah, how did you kind of get into that?
Because of my own health, I had a
Mm,
lot of struggles, and I have been a health and wellness person for over 40 years.
mm,
I have a master's in exercise physiology. I was always into fitness. I used to teach at a college level. And I started in my 20s struggling with my health, with autoimmune conditions, with gut issues, a
mm,
lot of the things that are common, particularly for women. And I did all of the regular health things, the
mm,
things that I knew to do for my body: diet, supplements, change my exercise, work on my sleep. Those are all physical
mm,
things. And I wasn't getting the results that I wanted. So I kept looking deeper, and I went back to school in my 40s. I'm 60 now. So I went back to school 20 years ago and started to learn more and more about the interaction and the integration of our physical body along with our spiritual body, our
mm,
emotional body, our mental body, and how all of that really needs to be addressed and work together. In our Western culture, we just don't realize that, or certainly I didn't, and the doctors that I sought out didn't really deal with that integration. So that was my own journey. And it wasn't until I started to do that and recognize the impact of thoughts and feelings that I had held for decades
mm,
about myself, things that had happened in my early life that made me angry, that I never dealt with the anger, especially for women. Like, anger, you want to be a nice person, you want to be a good girl, and you don't express your anger. And those things were
mm,
affecting my physical health. That was affecting my gut. That was affecting my immune system, because the immune system is a physical barrier for your physical body. Anger is an emotional barrier for your relationships and for what you're willing to accept in the world. So they actually have a very similar job to do for our well-being. So people who aren't expressing and dealing with anger very often see immune conditions crop up, and autoimmune is a big one.
It's fascinating the link between like these emotions or stored things and what they can do to the body. You know, like I know stress, for example, is a huge killer. Gets to a lot of people, unfortunately, and impacts us. But yeah, just even what you were sharing there, that these things that you had like stored away and how they were impacting on you. It can be huge, right? It's and I remember like releasing stuff from my various journeys and things I've done through different modalities, and it just coming out of the body and just even feeling lighter, like screaming like some kind of thing for like when I was a kid, and just coming out of my body and then feeling looser and in a more beautiful place.
Exactly. And you mentioned stress, and stress, or how well we deal with stress, has a
Mm,
lot to do with what's stored. Because if we're holding things stored, it makes our ability to tolerate things. And we call it a window of tolerance in the stress world. It's like what you can tolerate in terms of your nervous system. And that's where stress shows up. That's going to be greatly diminished if you hold things, if you've not released and processed things out. So just the everyday stresses of life become
mm,
intolerable when we're holding those things from the past.
mm, mm. And we live in the UK. I know, speaking of friends in the US, it's quite a common thing to be very fast paced and in quite like stressful environments. Having spoke to my friends in the US and experienced it in the UK myself, so yeah, it's something that we do get exposed to. Not all of us, but quite a lot of us. So yeah, that can be a big impact, I guess, for sure, for a lot of us. I wanted to touch on a little bit on the spiritual side because you're a transformational health and spiritual coach. So yeah, it'd be really interesting to hear, first of all, what spiritual being spiritual coach is for you, or what spiritual means for you, and actually the impact of that on our health.
Sure. So the way that I relate to spirituality, or how I would
Mm,
define it, it's very different from religion. A lot of times when I'm on social media and I'm doing a sharing something, and people really hear them as interchangeable. But to me, religion is the set of rules and rituals that a
mm,
person follows. So it might be you go to church every week, or you pray this way, or, it's the rules and the rituals. Those rules and rituals may or may not deepen your spirituality. So they may just be rules and rituals that you follow, but you're not spiritual at all. Because spirituality is your connection to self, your inner self. This is how I see it: your connection to your inner self and your connection to your source.
mm,
So when I look inward and upward to source, and source can be, God, I use the word God, but for some people it might be the universe. But it's
mm,
some intelligent, organized, divine intelligence, divine source that feeds the life force energy that we all have, and that source that we came from. So when we deepen our connection to ourself, we are deepening our connection to our source, because source is us. It's kind of like, this is how I see it: if you took a little
mm,
cup and went out to the ocean and you scooped up water, everything that's in the ocean would be in that little cup,
mm,
and everything that's in that little cup would be in the ocean, right? They're part of each other.
mm,
In terms of the ocean water, obviously not all the animals are in that little cup, but what makes up the ocean water makes up what's in that cup.
mm,
That's how I see people in relationship to the divine. We are part of, we came from. And when we connect to self, we deepen our connection to source, and that's a deeper spiritual connection with ourself, who the spirit of who we are, versus
mm,
the human being of who we are, which is out in the world, going to work and trying to make a living and doing all the things. That's the human part. The spiritual part is the essence. It's the source of ourselves. So religion may or may not support that. It depends on the person.
mm. Okay, and I really like the distinction that you made and your description of the religion being the rules the rituals we might be following, and then spirituality being about the connection to ourselves as the source and source as well. So really making that deep connection with ourselves. For you, like in terms of that connection to self, what have you found has worked for you in terms of really connecting to yourself or that and that source?
Well, a lot of the initial work that I needed to do and that I do with my clients is helping them to release messaging or conditioning that they've
Mm,
heard their whole life from their family, from authority, anything where the message is someone else knows better than you, right? When we give our authority away to someone else and we stop listening to the internal GPS that God gave us, right?
mm,
When part of our design is an internal intuition. And when we're disconnected from that, when we think other people know better about something for ourselves, or let's just say, let me give a specific example. We're in a relationship and things that that person says or does doesn't sit well, but we keep squelching that feeling and we keep going, oh, I'm just overreacting. Or we say something and they say to us, oh, you're overreacting.
mm,
Then we start to disconnect from the authority of ourself, which is, no, that didn't feel good. I know it didn't feel good. And we start to listen more out there. So an example of developing spirituality is starting to listen more to myself by releasing messaging or conditioning that tells me other things. Somebody else knows better. I need to keep the peace. Good girls don't get angry. That's what I mean by conditioning. When we
mm.
pay attention to that, then we shut down what we know to be true inside, and now we're disconnecting from self.
So almost, if I'm understanding correctly, almost like we have that connection available to us, that to source. It's just over years, over experiences through life. There's all these things that come on top of that and can get in the way a little bit.
Yeah, and it can start in childhood, Johnny. Like if you think of a very young child, children are really, really intuitive and
Mm,
they may not understand consciously what's going on in a room, but if let's say the adults are having an argument, the child like knows the feeling of that, like something's not right, right?
mm,
Then an adult says, don't worry about it, everything's fine. So the child says, oh, I guess I was wrong. It didn't feel fine, but this grown up is telling me everything's fine. So they start to doubt themselves and to
mm,
think, I must not know. That's like in small ways how it starts, which would be different than the grown up going, I know this is scary. I'm sorry you heard that. That must have been
mm,
upsetting to you. Do you want me to talk with you about that argument that you heard? So
mm,
that acknowledges, yeah, what you heard was scary and you are upset and you're upset for a reason. If we don't get those messages, then we don't believe ourselves.
mm.
And that carries over then as we grow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I like that example a lot actually. It's not one I've heard. It's as a kid you can go through different experiences, but actually being told that almost like the first example, how I kind of heard it was it's almost like your feelings are wrong. You shouldn't be listening to it, and that's completely different from the second scenario you gave, which is like, oh, that must like really hurt, and they're saying, but not directly, like your feelings are valid, and let's work through this together, and that's two completely different messages.
Right. And then that child of the second scenario grows up trusting themselves and listening and trusting and listening and trusting if that keeps getting reinforced.
Mm,
Or a kid comes home from school and says, they were so mean to me today in gym class. And then the next day they come home and they're like, they're still upset. And the parent says, get over it. That was yesterday. What are you being? Don't be a baby about that. This is what happens. So not allowing that child, let's say, to process through if it takes a couple of days. So it's
mm,
another like the example, but it's those types of things that then when we are adults, we doubt ourselves or we're in a relationship and the person says, I don't know what you're talking about.
mm,
You're upset about something, then you're like, okay, I guess I don't either. So connecting to yourself and developing your spirituality, part of doing that is practicing listening to yourself. And then also the effect is you listen more to yourself. And there's lots of ways to connect and with yourself and to let go of that conditioning. You have to find the ways that work for you. But
Mm,
music, anything that helps your nervous system calm down so that you can be in a peaceful state, then you can listen.
mm,
So people find different things: nature, walking outside, being in nature, laughter, music, hugging other people, people who it feels good to be with. Those are all ways to calm yourself so that then you can be listening to what your body's telling you. Because your gut instinct, it's called a gut instinct because you feel it
mm,
in your gut, right? You need to listen to what your body's telling you. Did you know, Johnny, that 80% of our nervous system comes from our body to our brain?
yeah,
80% of the information is body to brain,
yeah,
20% is brain to body. So when
mm,
we're only paying attention to our thoughts, we're missing 80% of the information that would help us connect to ourselves, which would
mm.
improve our health, improve our relationships, all of that.
Absolutely. I went and certified as a somatic breathwork facilitator, and yeah, just going through that and the connection to body was just really, really powerful. And just some of the things that I'd been ignoring over the years, or people I work with have been maybe not aware of in their body that's there, and then actually, wow, that maybe made no sense, but now it makes so much sense. It's crazy how much insight the body has.
Yes,
Amazing.
the body is the subconscious. That's where the conditioning and
Mm,
the message is in the body. We're not thinking about it consciously every day,
mm.
but it's stored in the body. So the body will give us signs and tell us.
I'm just thinking, Linda, you share some great points there. I'm just thinking for the individual who's, they're aware that they've gone through some tough experiences in their life or things that may have not served them. And they're at this point of complete overwhelm. Like, I want to release this stuff. I want to feel good. And they hear all these modalities out there. What would your guidance be for that individual who's maybe a little bit stuck? They know they want to do some work on themselves, but they're just no idea where to start with this.
Yeah. Well, you're right. There are a lot of modalities out there, and that's because there's a lot of different people out there,
Mm,
right? So what works for me may be different than what works for you,
mm,
but definitely some sort of somatic awareness and somatic practice to be in touch with the body. As human beings, we have the gift of emotions.
mm,
Emotions are a gift and they shape our experiences, but most people are not in touch with their emotions. So I would look for in your area some sort of somatic practice, and it could be yoga, it could be breath work. In the world of breath work, there's probably 100 different kinds of breath work that you could be doing, right? Some are to calm down, some are your breath speeds up to release, so you want to just try different things. Um, and I think finding a practitioner to work with who has a toolbox and
mm.
you can just kind of go through and then create your own toolbox based on your experiences is really helpful.
Oh, I love that, Linda. No, like you kind of touching on it. It's not a, like one thing works for me, one thing works for you, but yeah, just starting that connection to the body is a very solid foundation. Because in the mind, we're so caught up in the mind day to day, and like you say, it's 20% there. Well, it's 80% of our body, so that's a really good starting point. I like that.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
I would say so. And we
yeah,
do have to rewire how we think
yeah,
because
yeah.
those thoughts have been conditioned for years. So we got to work on that. But I think just starting to ease up in the body to release some of the stress energy, the sympathetic energy, and to get grounded in and to be aware of what your body's telling you. Then when you're in a safe place, feeling in your body, you can do some of the rewiring.
Yeah, yeah, that body 80% strong foundation. But yeah, like you're saying, thanks for touching on that. Not ignoring the mind, but yeah, the body's a huge role in our health. So thank you, Linda. As we wrap up today, Linda, I know you offer a lot of service out there. You're helping people with these kind of scenarios who may be a bit more challenged. Where can the listener find you if they want to find out more about your work? And is there anything you'd like to leave us with today in terms of a final message or just repeating something we've talked about today?
Yeah, I think a final message is understanding that it's a journey.
Mm,
No one is broken, in my opinion. No one is broken. There's just, have you been able to find the tools to help you move through what you want to do? So sometimes that just frees people up to be like, oh, really? Because I just thought I was stuck or something was wrong with me because other people don't seem to be stuck, whether it's my health
mm,
or other patterns in my life. So you're not broken. And it's a journey. And part of, I think, being a human being means we have things that are difficult. We have painful experiences, but if you choose to see them as opportunities for growth, they serve you. And I don't care how painful it is. I've had very, very significant painful experiences, including the loss of a child. My daughter passed away 5 years ago. And if you can take every experience, no matter how hard it feels, and look at it from how can this serve me? You're going to use your life as a stepping stone to the next thing and the next thing and to keep growing. And I think that's why we're here.
mm. A powerful message. Thank you, Linda, for sharing that. Using a
You're
stepping
welcome.
stone. You're not broken. It's often easy to think you're the only person in the world and you're stuck and you're broken. I've been in some dark places as well. And yeah, just that's a really powerful message. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. So people can find me on, it's super easy. My website is lindadowneycoaching.com,
Mm,
lindadowneycoaching.com. And there's ways that I work with people right on there. Actually, right now, because of Valentine's Day, I've been offering a discount. So there's a coupon called Love 15, LOVE 15. And if somebody went on the website and they wanted to, work with me in some way, they could put that coupon code in and do it at a lesser price, which is nice right now, but that just happens to be so. But on the website, you can reach out to me and also read more about the work that I do and the different things that are available.
amazing. All right. Thanks, Linda. We'll be sure to link that up. So you can find that in the show notes to reach out to Linda. So once again, Linda, a massive thank you for coming on today.
Thank you, Johnny, so much. It was a pleasure. I could listen to you talk all day.
Appreciate it. And you. All right. That concludes our episode for today. And remember to lead with your heart and not with fear.